Hello, my name's Peter and I'm here with Isabel. We're from Gearbox Labs. We're going to do an introduction to Tinkercad today. Tinkercad is a program that has a number of elements to it, but we're going to look at the circuit design in Tinkercad. This is the first part in a series of videos for you to learn about how to design circuits in Tinkercad using the Arduino Uno platform. So our first video is an introduction to the Tinkercad platform. How do you get in? How do you create a new circuit? And navigating around the workspace.
All right, there are two options in Tinkercad. If you don't have an account, so you join it now, and that way you can create an account which is free. And if you already have an account, just sign in. And in here we have four options. Usually we use email or username, which is the most common.
You also have the option, if you're a teacher, to join Tinkercad and create a classroom. You also have the options to sign in with your Google or Apple ID. But for today, we're going to log in with our username or email address.
So it's going to ask for email or username and then requesting the password. By signing in will take us to the main screen of Tinkercad where all the projects are there. We have projects for 3D designs, for circuits, for code blocks, lessons, but today we are gonna be using circuits. So by clicking on circuits, we are going to create a new one, and this is gonna be the screen for working. So we are going to take a look into the different buttons and functions Tinkercad has. The first one is gonna be at the right, you have all the list of components for building a project. So we are going to look at the search function, and in here we have all the list of components that we are gonna be working with. If you don't know which ones are those, at your right there is a button that is describing each of them. So in here we have what is a resistor, what is an LED, what is a push button. So that way it's going to be easier to select your component. So the next thing is going to be I'm going to search for Arduino Uno microcontroller, and this is just an example for showing the function of the buttons in Tinkercad. So the first thing is this tiny computer that we are going to be programming. So in here, when the project is too big in your screen, we have an option at your left top in this section, which is zoom in. So by clicking there, we can zoom our project depending the size you wanna use. So then we have at the top for rotating the components. By clicking on that section, we will be able to rotate the component. First, we have to click on it and then rotate. All right. So that way.
That's very helpful if you want to manage how your project looks, keep track of your wires better.
Right.
Sometimes it's helpful to rotate the piece that you're working with.
In most of the cases, students have to rotate the components because of the wiring. Yeah, it's important to see the connections, the pins, and rotation is going to be a very useful tool. So in case that you want to return to the next step or the last step, what you have to do is just click on redo, and the components are going to show up
Eventually.
All right. For identifying characteristics or what we are doing on our project, it's very important to use the notes. There, this instruction, that is the number 5, is going to, by clicking there, is going to open another tiny screen in which you can write. So it can be, I don't know, characteristics of the microcontroller or the connections. So this is gonna be a very useful function for remembering what we are doing. Now, sometimes when you present your project, or you are working with some more components, you have the instruction for erasing your notes or hiding. So by clicking on this button, the notes are going to be hidden. So that is another important function to remember in here.
One thing is I like to rename my projects. Is there a function, a capability of this application that we can rename our projects?
Right. At the top, we have a name that is given by Tinkercad. Let's erase it, and we type the name of the project we are working with. So in this case can be just Tinkercad demo. And that way our files are gonna be saved in our circuit project. At the upper right, we have the section for coding. In here, we have 3 options. Some of the students work with blocks, some others with blocks and text, or only text. In our case, since we are working with C++, we are going to use text. So by opening in here, we have to continue, and then Tinkercad has a code, which is an example, and this one is for testing the 2 LEDs on our microcontroller.
You like to always, before starting a new code, test the circuit design. So you've added wires, you've added other components, and you always come in here and run this code just to see that there's no short circuits. It's a really nice way to test your design before you type all the code in.
Yes. The microcontroller is coming already with an LED integrated and is connected to the pin number 13. That's why the code specifies the connection number 13. And those are the LEDs. One is gonna be in orange and the other one in green. And green is on, for just for indicating that the microcontroller is on. So we are going to close the code to see the complete project. By running the simulation, you will see one LED in orange and the other one in green. That indicates that our microcontroller, our project, is working. We are going to stop the simulation to continue with the next step. In this case, if the microcontroller is working, we have to go back to the code and then erasing that section, because we are going to type our own code. Now, Tinkercad has some other functions, like sharing our project. So if we click on sharing, we have the opportunity to see, to download our project, or inviting people to see it via email or using other platforms for sharing our project. At the top, we have some other functions. For example, at your right, you will see the component list. In here, since I'm using only an Arduino Uno, so it's gonna be listed only the microcontroller. And then if I want to go back to the digital design, just click to the next button, and we are going back to the project. So now that we know a little bit about buttons in Tinkercad, the next thing is gonna be the addition of components to our project. So that's why we are going to use the search section. And for example, let's type one component that we are going to use. Can be a breadboard, which is the second most important component. And then we are going to drag it to the left. Since the components are too big, we need to go to the zoom area. And that way they are going to resize. Very good. Usually we place the microcontroller at the top and the breadboard at the bottom, so it's going to be easier to do the wiring. Then we can continue searching for other components, which is the resistor. Those resistors are going to be very useful for working with LEDs because they control the voltage. So in here, there is another important thing to consider when we are building a project. We need to change the values in some of the components. And one example is the resistor. Resistors usually are 220 ohms. So we need to change this one to 220 ohms. And one characteristic that you can see there, they have a red-brown lines.
220 is very popular for Arduino projects.
Yeah, the most used actually, yes.
Okay, great.
Then we can work with the LED. So by searching LED.
Well, it's also there at the top, but we'll search.
Right. So LED stands for light emitting diode. So just for you to know. And in here we have other characteristics. For example, by clicking on the LED, you can change the colors. And as well, if you click on every pin, every leg of the LED, you will see the connection. We have cathode and we have anode. Cathodes are gonna be connected always to the negative side or ground. In electronics is represented in blue. And the other leg is the anode, or is the positive, represented in red. Now, the next thing is gonna be placing those components on the breadboard. So we are going to use the connections, the pins of the breadboard, dragging the components like that. And then we are going to explain a little bit about the breadboard. Breadboards is gonna be the platform for building the circuit. And in here we must have ground and 5 volts to create that loop and putting the energy to circulate. So that's why the microcontroller has the grounds and the 5 volts. So if you see in here, we have the two connections, ground and 5 volts. So 5 volts is gonna be always connected to the positive side of the breadboard. And if you see there, when you connect the 5 volts to the breadboard, you will see the pins in green. All the row is gonna be connected horizontally. So it doesn't matter if you place 5 volts here or here or here. I mean, the connection is gonna be always 5 volts.
Drawing wires on a Tinkercad project actually is pretty difficult. You have to know where you're starting, you have to know where you're going, and you have to click exactly in those spots in order to make that connection. It's okay because you can delete it or you can move things around like we just did, but the drawing is actually pretty difficult. You have to hover over the spot, you click, and see there, and I grab the Uno. I want to hover over that ground, and now I want to draw to the exact spot on the board there. And now I've made a wire.
Yeah, it's clicking and dragging.
Yeah.
And then, for changing the color of that cable, just click on the cable again, and the color changes. So, and we have two options for erasing the wire. You can click on it and then go to the upper left and on the bin, and it will disappear. And for returning the process, we just do that.
Okay, so now we've covered the basics of working within the Tinkercad circuits platform. We've drawn cables and wires, we've searched for components, we've found where we can do the coding, we know how to start a simulation and see how it works. All of those are kind of the basic functions. We know how to delete, we know how to rotate, we know how to do and undo. We can even add notes to our project. We can even resize the workspace using the zoom function. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the circuit section. We go to the upper left hand corner, click on the Tinkercad logo, and it will take us back to our collection of circuits. And you can see here now it's available. A little bit of information that we've finished this about 2 minutes ago. You can see some other projects that we've been working on. But for our next video, we're going to actually complete a project and make it operate.
Yes, it's going to be our first circuit, and this one will include an LED.